Genesis 6, we're going to look at the flood today. So if you go to Genesis 6, we'll be in verse 5. Last week we looked at the Nephilim, talked about kind of the different theories and who those people were, who were the sons of God and the daughters of men. Genesis 4 talks about the line of Seth, or Cain. Genesis 5, the line of Seth. Genesis 6, you have this little bitty section there that there's just a lot of debate and discussion, those 4 verses, kind of an odd section. I kind of tipped my hand. I lean strongly in the camp that the sons of God and the daughters of men is the union between angels who left their abode, as Peter and Jude talk about, and came down to this earth and wed human women and conceived in some way. So a lot of questions about that. And if you guys, I posted an article on the Facebook page. If you're not following that Facebook page, there's an article I put on there called "Who Are the Nephilim?" It's short, and there's a picture. So it's not all words, all right? It's worth reading. She does a good job kind of highlighting the view of the Sethite view, that it's actually another view. I just wanted you guys to have a counter perspective because that's just as legitimate of a view. It fits contextually in the text. I don't think it explains all the passages that reference that, for instance, in the New Testament, but I wanted you to at least have access to another view. And I am trying to post once or twice a week something, either a reflection or something about the study. So if you guys are, wanting to kind of, it's not just an update page. There's going to be content on there if you guys are interested in kind of taking a deeper dive. So we're going to get into starting in verse 9, but the run up to verse 9 is verses 5 to 8. Look at verses 5 to 8. When the Lord saw that human wickedness was widespread on the earth and that every inclination of the human mind was nothing but evil, all the time the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth. You can see kind of the extent of this. All the wickedness, every thought of man, every inclination of his heart was evil. It's setting it up for what would justify God coming in and wiping the entire slate clean. And what the author is saying is, evil grew to such an extent that God just said, it's time to scrap this thing and start all over again. And when you look at a passage like that, if you go to Genesis 1:31, look at that. You should see a contrast. Like when you're reading this, it ought to almost like kind of hit you. Like, what? I could have sworn I just read 1:31, which was, God saw all that he made, and it was very good indeed. Evening came and then morning the 6th day. That we go from everything God made was not just good, but very good. And by the time you get to chapter 6, all of a sudden, every thought, every inclination, everything was now so bad that God now is ready to wipe it out. And it says here that the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth. That word for regretted is the exact same word. If you go to chapter 5, verse 29, look at this. And he named him Noah, saying, this one will bring us comfort or relief. From what? From the agonizing labor of our hands. That's the same root word. It's the word in Hebrew. Context is going to determine how you translate or interpret a lot of words in Hebrew. It's not just the word itself, but what is the context around it? So in 529, Noah, it was believed, was going to bring them comfort. All of a sudden, same root word, now God regrets. What that means is that this isn't a regret like God made a mistake. It's a regret like it's the opposite of comfort. It's the grieving of his heart. God was so sad to watch what is happening, not because God was unaware of it, but just watching it. It's a little bit like if you ever had to take your son or your grandson to the dentist, and they got to do some real work on their teeth, and you know what's coming, right? You know it's coming. You set up the appointment, right? You know it's for their good, and it's going to be okay, right? He's a great dentist. She's a great dentist. They're going to fix it up. It's going to prevent a lot of suffering for your child or your grandchild later. All those things can be true, and yet when you're there, and you're holding their hand while the dentist is in their mouth and doing awful things. How do you feel? Tony, you're a granddad. How does that feel if you're holding Weldon's hand and they're digging in his mouth and causing all kinds of discomfort to him and he's crying?
Sad.
Sad. Grieve. Like, why does it have to be this way, right? That's how you feel. This is, in a sense, what God feels. It's not like God is surprised by it. You don't go to the dentist and you're surprised it's going to be uncomfortable. Like, I had no idea a drill in my mouth was going to be this uncomfortable. No, you know it's going to be uncomfortable, and yet you grieve because of the hurt and the suffering. We said it last time. When Jesus was at the tomb of Lazarus, what emotion did he display? He cried. He wept. Not because he was surprised, but because why? What was Jesus sad about?
He knew our human hearts were just grieving and suffering.
He's looking at the sadness of the hearts around there, right? And he also grieves at just probably the weakness of faith sometimes. They're looking at Jesus and saying, had you been here sooner, right? This could have been different. He's sad. He sees their suffering and he grieves. There's a doctrine in theology called the doctrine of the passibility of God. There is a big debate among theologians between what's called the passibility and the impassibility of God. The doctrine of impassibility says that God, because he has a perfect nature, he cannot be moved and cannot be changed in any way by emotions. He is not changed or moved by the events around him. He is perfect love, perfect goodness, perfect justice, perfect righteousness. And so God simply reflects in perfection all these emotions. He's not moved by any one thing. He simply is. Whatever he's in the midst of, he experiences that emotion because he has to. The doctrine of passibility says that God is a God that is an emotive God. His nature doesn't change. His power, his goodness, his knowledge, all of these things are static and immutable. But God is impacted in the moment by the sufferings of people and by events around him. And if you took evangelicals, that's our camp, and you line them up on who believes in the passibility and the impassibility of God, you're going to see about a 50-50 split. People that you respect are on both sides of the camp. I tend to lean towards the passibility of God. I tend to believe that when I read the scriptures over and over and I see the emotions of God, it's not just analogical or anthropomorphic language. I think it's displaying the heart of our God. And I think when Jesus comes on the scene, you see the emotion of Jesus as God and man right there. So I think God does experience emotions, not exactly like we do because his emotions are filled with all knowledge and all truth, but I think he has those and we are in his image and therefore we reflect those kinds of emotions as well in a much more limited way. So this is part of the debate here is what does it mean that God regretted and that he grieved, right? I tend to get much more comfort from the scriptures when I see that God really emotionally can grieve with me during times of suffering. Any comments on that? I want to just hit that and move on. Any thoughts that you guys might have on that topic? It's a fascinating debate. If you want to take a deeper dive, just go to ChatGPT and type in passibility versus impassibility. You can read all the arguments and then, I don't know, do something with it. So God then says in 7, I'll wipe out mankind, whom I created off the face of the earth, together with the animals, creatures that crawl, and birds of the sky. For I, same word, regret that I made them, grieved deeply. I grieve the suffering. Noah, however, underline this, found favor with the Lord. There was something about Noah that stood out in a world of suffering, in a world that's gone dark, a world that's evil. Noah stands out. Well, what is it? Well, let's look. Verse 9. These are the family records of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among his contemporaries. Two other people in Genesis that's mentioned. Who are the two people in Genesis that are mentioned as being blameless before God? Anybody? Enoch. He was so blameless. What did he get out of the deal?
No death.
No death. He got taken straight out. No wrath, no judgment, just straight out. The other one is Abraham. He was called to walk blameless with God, right? And then you get the highest description of intimacy with God in the next phrase. Look at this. It says,
What verse?
verse, I don't know, 9, 9b. Noah walked with God. There's the phrase, Noah walked with God. It's really the highest description of what it means to walk intimately with God. Walking in harmony with God, walking in mindfulness of God, walking in alignment with God. Noah walks with God. It's not a word that means perfection. It's a word it's the idea of integrity, that there's a wholeness. Let me ask you guys a question. Can you be a person of integrity and still mess up and make mistakes? Can you? If you're a person of integrity and you mess up, what is it that makes you a person of integrity?
You admit it.
You own it.
You own up for it.
You own it. All integrity means, which is what this concept is of Noah, the root word of integrity is we get the word integer. If you remember from 7th grade math, remember that chapter? You had a chapter on integers. And integers was the chapter before another chapter that was really hard. And that chapter was a chapter on fractions. Remember when they started breaking the numbers down in parts? Okay, that was a tough chapter for idiots like me, right? But for guys like you, it's probably easy. The chapter before that I loved because it was the chapter on what's an integer? Whole numbers, right? 1 plus 1, 9 times 6. These are integers. 9 divided by 3. Those are whole numbers. They're integers, not fractions. So integrity is the idea of a wholeness. There's not things aren't fractionated. That if I do what I say I'm going to do, I do that because I'm a person seeking integrity. If I do what I know I shouldn't do, what am I going to do? I'm going to own it. That's not what I should have done. I'm going to own it. I'm going to confess that. I'm going to try to make it right. Right? I'm going to try to make it right. So integrity is not about perfection. Integrity is, am I the kind of person that strives to do what I know is right, but when I don't, I still strive to make it right. And I make it right by owning it. And what is the worst thing a person can do if they're not going to own it?
Right.
Hide it, conceal it, because that's where the fraction occurs, right? That's now where there is this part of me that is not known. There's a part of me that gets projected and is known, and there's a part of me that's not known. And all of us, if you're a human being, if you're a man, know sometimes what it's like to withhold, to maybe not share, because I don't want to be fully seen. I don't want to be fully known. So when Noah is seen as one who's blameless before God, for Noah walks with God, it's talking about this idea of moral uprightness and integrity that Noah had. And God sees him out of the entire world and says, that is my man. And look what happens. Noah fathers 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, if you notice, Noah, we know from chapter 5, how old was Noah when he had his kids? 500. He was 500 years old, according to the text. Side note, the flood began when Noah was 600 years old. We know that in chapter 8. So when Noah was 600, the flood waters began. So you've got about a 100-year period. And within that, if you look at some of the numbers, you're going to see that this ark that Noah now is going to be commanded to create, Noah's going to spend about 50 to 75 years is the estimate. It's going to take 5 to 7 decades for Noah to build this ark with his 3 sons. About 50 to 70 years, right? And no one has any idea what this thing is that's going up, right? You guys ever seen a house going up and it just seems like it's forever? Just kind of sits there forever. And after a while you walk by, what do you start doing when you see that house that just been sitting there forever in transition, never really getting fully built? What do you start saying whenever you see that house?
Never going to get.
Never going to get built. What is that?
Kind of like Teasley.
Yes.
Yeah.
I-35. You look at that and you just go, what are these guys doing? Right? These guys, are they still building this thing? Ha, ha, ha. You just kind of start laughing about the whole thing. This is what Noah's facing. 50 to 70 years building something for a purpose that they've never seen. Rain? A flood? What is that? So let's get to that. Look what happens. So it says, verse 11, now the earth, here we go again, was corrupt in God's sight. The earth was filled with wickedness. By the way, that word wickedness in Hebrew, it's the word Hamas. Just FYI, but you might. Isn't that interesting? God saw, I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying it just happens to be.
Too late.
But it is Hamas, it is the Hebrew word Hamas, and it's the word for violence or wickedness. God saw how corrupt the earth was, for every creature had corrupted its way on the earth. Where does responsibility fall for the corruption of the earth? What's the text say? People. Why does God hold people accountable? What did He give human beings such that they are accountable for their actions? Free will. He gave us choice to make these decisions. And He says, we are the reason. Then He says, verse 13, then God said to Noah, I have decided to put an end to every creature, for the earth is filled with Hamas, wickedness, violence, because of them. There it is again. So I want you to notice twice now. In the beginning of chapter 6, you talk about how evil man's heart was. In every way, in every inclination, his heart was evil. Then you see again, it's corruption and wickedness and violence. Why does the text keep reinforcing this idea? What's the author trying to do for the reader? What's the point?
God had a purpose or a reason.
There is a purpose. This isn't just some impetuous God that just is angry and says, I'm just going to go flood the earth. No, centuries and centuries and centuries have gone by. Now here we are, and it's more corrupt than ever before. And it's making the point that God, because of His nature and His character, has no other choice. His patience is great, but it's not unlimited. Right? And so He says, this is what I'm going to have to do. Because of them, therefore I'm going to destroy them along with the earth. So an obvious question would be, didn't God know this was going to happen? Do you think God knew that the heart of man would grow wicked and violent and that God would judge the earth with a flood? What do you think? Do you think God knew that from the beginning or no?
Yes.
Yes, he did know that. So if He knew that and God grieves along the way what He's seeing, what does that mean has to be the reason that God still did it? In my view, there's only one answer to this. What is it?
Love for us.
What's that?
Love for us.
Love for us. Love for us is going to be the result. What was even the greater thing, do you think? That's the result. You're exactly right about that. What is the mechanism that God would now have to do in order to show His love for us? Christ. See, before the foundations of the earth, right, God knew He was going to do this. He was going to demonstrate His love. He was going to demonstrate the level of His, there's no other word. I mean, Paul calls this aspect of God, what's the word he uses? He uses it one time in the New Testament. He makes up the word. And it's a word that means so far above our understanding. It's a word that it's so superlative that God knew He had to have a world full of free creatures that would go awry in order for Him to send His Son into this world to show the greatness of His nature and of His love, to offer the sacrifice of Himself through the second person on the cross so that He could demonstrate His love to us. Right? That's it. God never had to create at all. People ask the question, why did God create in the first place? Why did God create? Why did He create anything at all? He was in perfect love in the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, perfect union, perfect harmony, perfect self-existence, right? He did not need creation in any way. Why did God create?
Fellowship.
Okay. Fellowship with man. What else?
To demonstrate His love.
To demonstrate his love, that's right. There was a part of God's nature that God is glorified by the demonstration of his own character and nature. And what is the highest form of God demonstrating his character and his nature?
To share that.
To share that by the giving of his own life, the giving of himself, right? This is what God longed to do. He is glorified and his love being demonstrated in the most extreme of forms. Right? This is why when Jesus is on the cross and he says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? This idea of this metaphysical fracture within the Godhead, it's so incomprehensible what's happening between the separation of the Son from the Father and the abandonment that the Son feels. And yet it's all born out of the very love of God. So the very love of God is happening. The grounds are being set up from the very beginning. Yeah.
I'm thinking about he's the creator, and in us, in all of us, we have this joy and this desire to create. So could it be out of this, as the creator, that was a drive that God had to create? I don't know, maybe I'm going a little too.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I can see, I understand what you're saying. I believe it was Thomas Aquinas said that one of the reasons that motivated God was that God was glorified in every aspect of creation because all of it reflected his own glory and beauty through all of creation. When you look at the trillions of galaxies that exist, the sheer enormity of the universe. When you look at the beauty, the depth, the complexity of nature and life, light, physics, chemistry, all of these things, all of it says it's the creation cries out for the glory of God. Everything cries out for the glory of God. And man happens to be the pinnacle of that act of creation. Right? So it's just all about the glory of God being reflected in creation. And the highest form of his glory is the sacrifice of himself. Yeah. Do you have a thought on that?
In this room, every man in this room, when he does a good job, he sits back and goes, yeah, that's pretty awesome. And I'm just equating that to, every day of creation.
Yeah.
Those things.
Yeah. Yeah, as a creator, that's absolutely, yeah. I think that's right.
The word you're looking for Paul, hyper, how he added hyper to before many words.
Yeah, it's in the Corinthians. Do you see it?
H-U-P-E-R.
Well, huper, yeah. What's the word in English? Do you see it?
Huper perisio.
What's the word in English?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
It doesn't say.
You're speaking Greek to me, Chad. I don't know.
Exceedingly abundant above all that we ask or thank him.
No, it's not Ephesians 3. No, it's in Corinthians. It'll come to me in the middle of the talk. So, verse 14. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Gopher wood, we're not really sure what it is, just FYI. All right? There's been a lot of people talk about what it... Huh?
Hooper Bowl?
No. Well, yeah. Thank you, Chad.
2 Corinthians?
This word,
Could this be wood that,
I'm not even sure what's Sarah. What's that? What's
could
that?
this be wood that gophers use?
Could be what the gophers use. Yeah. It's interesting, this word, the ark, it's only used twice. It's only used twice in the Old Testament. It's here. It's the ark that Noah's commanded to make. Anybody know where the next use of it is?
Moses.
It's Moses. It's Moses, the basket that Moses was put in, and the basket when he's put into the river, right, surrounded by the waters. It's the same word. And God just says, make yourself an ark. Make rooms in the ark. Cover it with pitch inside and out. That word pitch, by the way, it's a very important word. It's a word that literally means pitch. It's going to be a type of tar that you're going to cover it with, but it's the word kafar. We get like Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur. What is that? The day of what? Day of Atonement. This is the word for atonement, to cover. He's saying, cover this ark with pitch, right? Cover it all, inside and out. And whatever goes inside this ark and is sealed by its covering will be what? Will be saved. Sound familiar? Right? Whatever goes in the ark and is surrounded by judgment, if you're in the ark and you are covered completely, you will be safe. You will be saved at that point. Right? It's a clear foreshadowing of what's to come much, much later. right? Through Christ and the cross. So he says, cover it inside and out. This is how you're to make it. Hey, anyone been to the, and they're like, Chad, you've been, right? Did you see, Spunky, you been? You guys saw the ark? It's meant to be, how many of y'all have seen it? Where is it?
Tennessee.
It's in Tennessee? Yeah. And it's meant to be an actual life-size replica according to these measurements. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. About a football field and a half long, just pretty massive. Are you able to go into it, or do you?
Oh, no, you can go in.
You can go in?
Toward the whole thing.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that, you can try to reconstruct this as best you can. And he gives you some basic descriptions of it. The size, 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. You're to make a roof, finishing the sides of the ark to within 18 inches of the roof. You're to put a door in the side of the ark, make it with lower, middle, and upper decks. Verse 17, understand that I am bringing a flood. Floodwaters on the earth to destroy every creature under heaven with the breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish. I want you to notice for a second, you're about to see what's called a decreation. A decreation is everything that God did in creation is about to be decreated, and then the command will be for a recreation. Let me give you a few examples of this. Day 2 will be undone. Day 2 is when the waters, God creates the waters. Now the waters are going to be let loose onto the earth. They're going to be in chaos, ravaging the world. You're going to see day 3 undone. Day 3, God has the land appear. You're going to have the land disappear. You're going to have day 6 undone. All the creatures and animals and man that the breath of life is in are now going to what? Are going to die, right? And then you're going to have a recreation. And in the recreation, you're going to see all this stuff, the land show up again, the waters calm once again. You're going to have the command to go and be multiply. We'll let everything multiply according to its kinds, according to its kinds. It's like you're going right back again to Genesis chapter 1. So you've got a creation, a decreation, and then you have a recreation that's occurring here from the flood. And so now he says, verse 18, he says, but I will establish my covenant with you. It's the first time covenant is mentioned in your Bible. Notice that God is the one who takes the complete initiative for this covenant. Okay? And this covenant is what is a covenant? It's like an agreement. It's like a promise. It's a promise that he makes. He says, I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark with your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives. You are also to bring into the ark 2 of all the living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of everything. From the birds according to their kinds, from the livestock according to their kinds, from the animals that crawl on the ground according to their kinds. There it is, the recreation. They will come to you so that you can keep them alive. Notice that they will come to you. All of nature is under the authority of God. Verse 21, take with you every kind of food that is eaten, gathered as food for you and for them. And Noah did this. He did everything that God had commanded him. What could you write next to that verse about Noah? Obedience. Hard worker. Faithful. Right? Noah walked with God. Wholehearted devotion. He just believed. Do you think Noah understood everything that was going to be happening? You think he understood? No. Not at all. You think he had questions? You think at night when he's sitting with his wife and his kids and they're just having a meal, you think they had some pretty intense conversations about what the heck is God talking about? Right? As God is revealing this to Noah, what do you think his kids think?
It's crazy.
What's going on? He just turned 500. I think Dad's got some issues going on here. Right? Something off right here.
We're taking the key.
And he says, hey kids, listen, we're going to build this thing. It's called an ark. I know you've never seen one before. God told me how to build it. It's going to take probably 50 years to build this thing. By the way, everyone's going to laugh at us. Everyone's going to mock us. No one's going to, when you tell them there's a flood coming, they're going to say, what's a flood? They've never seen a flood. Right? There's been no judgment like this ever before. And so now the world looks, and the world will mock, and the world will jeer and say, that doesn't make any sense. How foolish, how silly. Right? And how do you think they're going to view Noah and his family in terms of what they represent? How are they going to view what they represent? How's the world around them going to view them? As, are we glad that they're bringing the light of God to the world?
Foolish.
Yeah, foolish. Not just foolish, but what else? Crazy. Evil. Listen to what they're saying. What?
Holy rollers.
Holy rollers. Right? Just name the word. And they're going to see that these are people who are just they're out of their mind. Remember, that's what, by the way, when Paul was making his defense before King Agrippa, remember when the high priest looks at him and he says he's out of his mind? And Paul says, whether I'm out of my mind or not, right, I'm here to tell you the truth. And I hope that you will believe, right, that you sound, when you begin to talk about what God says, it sounds crazy sometimes. It sounds crazy. Yeah.
Had it ever rained before?
Well, some say because there's a pure botanical life that's there has to be waters in order for all of it. So there might have been a mist of the ground, there's dew, there might have been some rains, but this idea of a massive flood, we don't have any, at least from this, no record of massive floods and rainstorms and catastrophes happening on the earth at that time that we know of. Right, that we know of. But certainly not this kind of a flood, right? It's going to be absolutely cataclysmic. And they're building this monstrous structure. It's just amazing. Anyway, so I think the point of this text, though, is that whenever you have a message of God, it will always sound a little bit crazy. I'll give you a good example. I was flying this week to El Paso, and there was a lady sitting next to me, an older lady, and she had this book. And it was a book by a guy named Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell is probably the 20th century's leading mythologist. He is an expert and a master of all myths in the world. He wrote A Hero with 1,000 Faces. He wrote a book called The Power of Myth. And his work on myth is extraordinary, just his knowledge of just the myths of the world. The problem that, in my opinion, Campbell has, because I read Campbell very early on. My father got into Joseph Campbell very early on, and it really did a number on my father's faith at that time, or his lack of faith. It did a bigger number on him. But what Campbell basically says is all myths are borrowed stories from each other, and that the entire Christian story, Old Testament to New Testament, is all borrowed from cultures all around them. So he kind of reduces everything to borrowed stories around the world, that there's no ultimate story, right? It's just all, copying from each other in many ways. And she begins to tell me about this. She begins to tell me about the blood-drinking sacrifices, rituals of the Mayans and the Aztecs is no different than the Last Supper and the communion supper of drinking the blood of Jesus. And right, and I'm just talking and I'm just listening to her. And I would just ask her these questions. And I said, so do you have any I said, did you grow up in any kind of a religious tradition? She said, oh, I grew up. And she told me how she grew up. And I said, what about today? She goes, oh, God, no. She said,
What about what?
Oh, God, no.
No, what?
Do you have any sort of faith or religion in your life today? And she's like, oh, God, no, which is kind of an ironic statement, right? Oh, God, no. And I was like, really? She said, no. It's when you begin to realize that it's all stories written by men that made it up in religion. All religion does, she says, is control people. It's all about control. She goes, I grew up where I was taught by priests and nuns, and she said, they controlled everything I did. And she said, I always felt like God was just watching over me, and everything I did was being tallied right. And you could just see the emotion. You could feel the emotion. And here she is now, probably pushing 70, and she is now pushed so far away from religion, right? And probably rightfully so in many ways. But she now sees it as all utterly foolish. It's all completely foolish. When I got to El Paso, I've got this group of guys there that I go once a quarter. I've been going for 2 years now. And I've really connected with these group of 8 guys. They run this entire operation down there. And we get about 3 hours and we do these trainings. And towards the end of the training, one of the guys had mentioned he brought up Steve Jobs. And when we were just talking about some of the challenged relationships that Steve Jobs had in his life. If you know much about Steve Jobs' life, he struggled sometimes with relationships. It comes with being a genius, I guess. But he had a hard time with, and so we began talking about just kind of how sad the ending of Steve Jobs' life was. And one of the guys says, why would it be so sad? He changed the world. I mean, he was a billionaire. And so we began talking about it. And then I said, hey, can I show you a video? And I showed them this 90-second video of Tom Brady. And I'm showing the video to them, and Tom Brady is being interviewed. You all seen this video? And he's being interviewed. And Tom Brady is saying, I mean, I won 3 Super Bowls. And he said, that's great. But, there's got to be more than that. There's got to be more than this. And then the interviewer says, well, what is it, Tom? He goes, I don't know. I don't know. And then one of the guys goes, how can he say there's more than that? Look who he was married to. He was married to a Victoria's Secret supermodel. The guy was a superstar. He had all this money and he goes, how could there be more than that? And then another guy chimes in, right? And I said, can I show you guys something? And so I showed them the 4 levels of happiness. And I don't know if I ever did that with you guys. I showed them the 4 levels of happiness. Robert Spitzer talks about this. And as I'm walking through it, right, level 1 is this level that it's about immediate gratification. It makes you happy. That good steak dinner, that nice, for some, glass of wine, that nice cup of coffee, that great cup of coffee you might have in the morning, that person that you have a great time with, right? These are momentary joys. They make you happy in the moment, but they're fleeting. Because after that meal is over, what do you think? When's the next one? I gotta poop, yeah. Thanks for your contribution. That's right. Which is another great moment of pleasure. That's right. That's right. That's true. And so level 1 is going through life where you have these momentary pleasures. It's the meeting with a friend. And you have that meeting, and you meet for an hour or so. It's a great time. Then you move, and then you leave, and it's over. Right? Level 2 is what's called the ego comparative level, and it's the happiness that comes when you look at your life in comparison to. Right? And it's now where one person looks at themselves and they look at what they've accomplished, what they've done, where they went to school, what they drive, what they live in, and they pull up to the red light and they kind of see a comparison and they feel good about it. They feel good about how hard they worked. They feel good about their graduate degree. They feel great about their PhD. They feel great about whatever it is they have, right? And there's a level of satisfaction, I've worked hard for this. Right? And some elements of that are a good thing. They show the fruit of a man's labor. Right? That's level 2. And in the world, those 2 levels are the predominant levels that you go through life in. But level 3 is the level when you realize 1 and 2 isn't enough. And level 3 is known as the contributive level, where now you just say, there's got to be more. I got to give back. Where can I go serve? Where's an orphanage I can go support? Let me go build a well in Africa. Yeah, I've got my $25 million mansion over the cliffs in Pepperdine, in Malibu, but you know what? I'm going to go start a school in Zimbabwe, right? Because I got to give back. There's got to be more to life than just acquisition, right? And so now you got people serving and giving and donating, and that's a good thing. There's a lot of satisfaction. There's happiness that comes from that. But even that, at some point when you become deeply reflective, you stop and go, is this it? Is this it? It's like that guy I told you about that they called me one day and said, I've got to meet with you. This guy bought his own island. He's got his own 5-star resort on his own island, right? He's got one of the most beautiful homes in Dallas. It's extraordinary. Right? He writes $1 million checks for fun to all kinds of causes. And he called me one day, he's like, this isn't enough. What is wrong? I feel like there's something missing, Walter. What's missing in my life? Right? And I got to talk to him about faith. Did I tell you the story? I said, hey, why don't we do this? I'll come to your house every week. I'll come to your house every week, 7 a.m. Let's start with the book of Genesis. I'll walk you verse by verse. Let's just go through the Bible together. Let's see what God has to say. Really? You do that? Yeah, I'll do that. Great. We get to Genesis 1, Wow, I got all my articles, creation. He was kind of agnostic, creation, physics, science, existence of God. He's like, wow, that's so interesting. Chapter 2, the glory of man. He loved that chapter. Man in the image of God, the greatness of man and how good man, right? He loved that chapter. Genesis chapter 3, the fall of man. There's nothing man can do to earn his way back to God. Isaiah says his deeds are as filthy rags. He looks at me and he says, wait a minute. Are you telling me everything I've done, every check I've written, are you telling me that all means nothing to God? I said, well, it means something to him only in the sense that you've helped some people, but in terms of your relationship with God, it means nothing to him. And I remember he took his Bible and he does this. And he closed it and he goes, I think this is our last Bible study. It's exactly what he said. And I never had a Bible study with him again after that. Okay? That is the heart of man. So these guys are talking to me about how could there be more? And I'm like, that's level 3. And I go, guys, there's a level 4. There's a 4th level? Yes. What do you think it is? Yeah, they had no idea. What could be after that? And I wrote up there. And again, this isn't my model. This is Robert Spitzer's model, which I love. And I wrote the word transcendent. There's got to be something your life is connected to that lives beyond this world. And one guy goes, religion? And he goes, it doesn't have to be a religion, right? I go, well, it depends what you mean by religion, but I know what you mean. For some people, it could be religion. And then another guy says, yeah, but it doesn't have to be a religion, does it? And you can just see this aversion to what?
A creator.
To a creator, any rules, any kind of construct, any kind of structure that God is imposing on human beings. Because what do they want for themselves?
Freedom.
People want nothing but utter freedom, autonomy, to rule their life the way they want. These are the people outside of the ark that their hearts have gone so far from God that they're watching Noah build this thing, and they are clearly rejecting and mocking and jeering Noah, right? Until the final days. Let's look at it very quickly and we'll be done. Verse 1, chapter 7. Then the Lord said to Noah, enter the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you alone are righteous before me in this generation. Wow, what a phrase. You alone are righteous before me in this generation. You are to, let's stop right there for just a second. This to me is such a inspirational challenge. He's not saying you alone are perfect. Again, what does the concept of righteousness mean? Let's make sure we're clear on this. What does it mean? Was Noah a fallen man?
Yes.
Of course he was. So what does it mean that you alone are righteous?
Right relationship with God.
Yes. Do you remember with David, the fascinating phrase said of David after all of his crimes, after his murder and his adultery? What does God say about David?
Man after my own heart.
He's a man after my own heart. That there's something about built into the imperfections and the struggles of man. God sees the heart and sees the longing for wholeness and integrity, the desire to live according to the precepts and the desires of God. That's what it is. That I live, some days are better than others. Man, I've had some bad days. But man, even in the bad days, deep in my heart, I feel the longing for wholeness. I feel the longing for integrity in my heart. I want to make my days right before God. Even on my tough days, even on the days that I fail, I want to do right. Y'all know what I mean?
Yes.
That's what it means. And Noah in this day was the only one that was seen as righteous. The only one who had the instinct in his heart to want to walk in moral uprightness, to walk in alignment with his God. And so, verse 2, you are to take with you 7 pairs, a male and its female, of all the clean animals, and 2 of the animals that are not clean, a male and its female, and 7 pairs, male and female, of the birds of the sky, in order to keep offspring alive throughout the earth. What's this called? Recreation. I want the creation to reproduce and multiply. 7 days from now, I will make it rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And every living thing I've made, I will wipe off the face of the earth. And Noah did everything that the Lord commanded him. There it is again. I want to get to this last verse here in a second. Verse 6, Noah was 600 years old when the flood came. Water covered the earth. So Noah, his sons, his wife, his sons' wives entered the ark because of the flood waters. From the animals that are clean, from the animals that are not clean, from the birds and every creature that crawls on the ground, 2 of each, male and female, came to Noah, entered the ark, just as God had commanded them. Look at this, verse 10. 7 days later, the flood waters came on the earth. For 7 days, what is Noah doing?
Gathering.
He's gathering. He's on this ark. He's watching animals in pairs coming to this ark. He's beginning to see this mass migration coming towards him. And for 7 days, why do you think God had Noah do it that way? What do you think?
Well, it showed his faith one more time.
What'd you say?
For those mockers to see it.
He wanted to give everyone everyone's watching this. What are all these animals doing? Right? He wanted Noah and his sons and his family to see it. All these things that God spoke to Noah, look what's happening. All of nature is under the domain and under the control of God. They're all going to this one location. They're getting onto this ark. And the world sees it, and his family sees it.
Yeah, it's a miraculous event that he had said would happen.
That's right.
And he also was saying to the people, and they saw it happening.
They saw it happening.
And they still
rejected, right? You can cry for signs and wonders all day long, right? Jesus even said they could see a man raised from the dead, and it wouldn't matter, right? That when the heart turns from God, signs and wonders don't matter whatsoever. And yet this is God's grace and God's mercy. He lets the world see this final great miracle before utter devastation is going to befall them. And he gives this miracle to Noah and his sons and their wives. Because when the flood is over and they go back into the world to repopulate the world, guess what story they will be telling every day of their life? You imagine those stories? 2 of everything, and they start just spreading the story. This is one reason why I think I'm what's called an originalist. I think there was an original story behind every story. And I think over time, these stories began to take different, it's like the telephone game. But the original core story of flood began to spread all over the world. And you would have local floods happen all over the world. And you would then begin to retell these stories in the same language, right? I think there was an original flood, an original story. Last thing, and then we're going to conclude. There's a debate about whether or not the flood was universal or whether or not the flood was local. Okay? The universal people say, well, the Bible clearly says that the waters rose to the highest mountaintop. So obviously it's universal. The local flood people say the purpose of the flood was to wipe out mankind and everything in that area. So it doesn't have to be all the way around the world because things hadn't migrated that far yet. It only had to be a flood to the extent of the migration of human beings. So it would be global or universal, not global, universal in scope from how far mankind had drifted. Because the purpose of the flood was to wipe out mankind because of mankind's sin, all right? Those are the 2 views. The Bible does use language sometimes. For instance, the census, when everyone had to go to their town to give a census. Remember, Rome said everybody in the world had to go and register for the census. Does that mean everybody in the world, or what did that mean? In the Roman world. See, it's not global, it's universal with respect to the context of what the author is referring to, right? And you see that language many, many times. And in this language, I tend to be sympathetic to the local view in terms of the flood, and I think geology supports that. There's major evidence of massive flood geology that's gone on in this area about this period of time, okay, some 10,000 years ago. I think that there's a lot of support for that. In terms of, could it be global? It could be global. It could be global.
But
I don't necessarily, what's that?
Supernatural still nonetheless, right? I mean, you
Right.
couldn't have thousands of feet of water
Yeah.
locally. It would spread too much.
Yeah.
But it still has to be a supernatural. And do localists disagree with it being a supernatural thing?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. In fact, they would probably still say God uses natural means to do supernatural things, right? God can certainly make the storms and the floods greater. That said, at the same time, you do have the reshaping of land masses depending on, water is powerful. You can see all kinds of major manipulations on the earth of, ranges being created. So there's a lot of evidence. It's a fascinating discussion to look. Is this local? Now when I say local, it's still universal. Universal in what sense? Every human being, every creature that had migrated up into this point, right? You're only from Genesis 2 to Genesis 6, so the migration wasn't like they went to the other side of the globe yet, right? So, but again, either view, there's people on both sides that take both views. I could go either way. Yeah, John.
When I was a teenager, I had the opportunity to hike and get to the very top of Mount Whitney in California. There were shells up there.
Shells up there, yeah. Yeah, there are mountain ranges that do have shells and tropical plant life in certain parts of the world that you wouldn't expect tropical plant life.
A long way from local, but there were shells up there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there is a Pacific Ocean there too, though.
But Walter, at that,
Just kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah.
at that time also, the world was different. Water comes up from below.
Yeah.
Water comes down to rain for the first time. So this perfect terrarium, if you will, the concept of the vapor canopy, only would form over a landmass.
Yeah.
It would not form over water.
Right.
So in that case, the theory then would be that the landmass was more centralized on the earth, as back in Genesis 1.
Yeah.
So then when this all started to occur, the flood, everything started breaking up. So then that's when the theory is plate tectonics starts to move the
Right.
earth and shape and change. And then that's why the ages of man was greater at that time versus the ages of man now because of ultraviolet light coming in and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, and to John's point, you've got all these fossils all over the earth, all over the world, around the same time and around the same strata of earth.
Right.
So you have to kind of, as you said, it's just kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah.
It's not a self-pick type of thing. It is postulizing on really what happened. So what's one of my first questions going to be to God when I die? How'd you do it?
Yeah. Well, I think what Kevin said very well is he described one theory out there that's a very popular theory in the evangelical world, and that is the young earth theory. And the canopy that he's talking about is this water vapor canopy around the earth. It's believed is what allowed you have this greenhouse effect, and that part of the flood was the breaking of the waters above, so that those waters then come down and flood the totality of the globe. Right? That is the young earth view that's there. And so a lot of geologists that are young earth creationists have spent a lot of time trying to identify how would you sustain a canopy around the earth. Would it be God? Right? Is there a physiological or way to be able to? Is there a way for physics to work that way? A lot of debate. Old Earth people don't believe in a canopy. They don't think there's no need for a water canopy. It was simply a miraculous act of God that came in and caused the floods. And so two very different approaches to this story, okay? My point is, I'm not really all that interested in which one's right. What I care about is Noah walked with God, and that there was judgment on the earth, and that God had called him as a righteous man because of the judgment on the earth, and that I want to be like Noah. And that God is a God who fulfills his promises and his covenants, and that covenant, that promise now goes from Noah all the way to Shem, and from Shem all the way down to Abraham, and from Abraham to Isaac, to Jacob, to Joseph, through Judah, all the way to Jesus, right? That to me is what matters in the story. The other stuff I love to read about, but I don't necessarily have to put my stake in the ground and say this is what it is or else. I think they're all interesting arguments. I already told you guys, I tend to be now at this phase of where I am, more convinced of the old earth view. That doesn't mean that I'm right. It's where I land today. I'm not imposing that on anybody. That's why I'm trying to be as fair as I can with both sides. There's the young earth and the old earth view. So they both have very different ways of understanding flood geology and everything that happened.
You didn't give all three names of his kids, of Noah's kids.
Shem, Ham and Japheth, that's right. Yeah, but from Shem, because that's the son that the line's going to go through.
Well, how come you didn't give all three names?
Because Shem is the one that the line through Jesus is going to come through. That's all. Yeah, that was it. Sorry.
You know, Walter, just kind of illustrates to me that those guys that you met with in that room and that woman on that airplane,
Yeah.
we need to be praying for them because when the floods come,
Yeah.
they're going to want in.
Well, and the good news is we're all a voice everywhere we go. You know, we all have our own opportunities to be voices wherever we go that no one else has access to. I don't have access to your friends, right? We don't have access to each other's friends and communities. And so we should be praying for ways to be wise, right? We don't have to be Bible beaters. We just have to be people that truly love and care for people and create the conversations and just be praying for those opportunities, right? I don't have to go all the way to the gospel. God's bigger than that. I can take my time and work with these guys and build this relationship with these guys, right? And slowly, you know, it's been 2 years and finally we've had this, you know, they paid me to have this conversation. It's great. Loved it.
To Spunky's point, to amend what you said earlier, unless this gentleman is gone, but you haven't had another Bible study with him yet.
Right. That's right.
It's possible.
It's true.
Very.
What? You
It's
didn't
true.
tell us what Tom Brady's final answer was.
He says he doesn't know.
Still doesn't.
He still doesn't. I don't know how old the interview was, but I mean, it was just a few years ago. He's still looking. Bill, you had one last comment?
Yeah, just perplexed as to why all the animals were destroyed. You know, that's always kind of bothered me a little bit. What's that about?
Yeah. Well, the fish weren't. They lived. But if you're going to have a flood wipe out all of mankind, obviously the animals are going to be a part of that devastation, right? That's going to come with it. So whether, you know, again, all sometimes means all. Sometimes it's such hyperbolic language and judgment that I don't know if they were all. Were they all? I mean, the Bible says all, so I'm going to go with all. But, you know, were there a couple cheetah that made it? I don't know. They took off running. Who knows? But I understand what you're saying in that, but that's just the nature of the judgment. It's wiped clean. It's a decreation. All that was good is now wiped, and now there's a recreation of a whole new plan that God has. So, anyone else?
It is interesting that even before the Old Testament, they're talking about clean animals and unclean animals.
Yeah.
Which when we see here Job, read Job, there seemed to be a lot of things that the Holy Spirit was saying to his people that then became part of the
Religious practices.
But
Yeah.
clean and unclean, I mean, there's no description of what that was until we get later in.
That's right.
So I find that just interesting.
I do too.
The other thing would be, we have the testimony of the ark. Do you think that the people could still see the cherub keeping people out of that garden area for that period of time too, where they could actually go, don't go there. You got these flaming sword things. Do you think it's possible that was...
I've wondered about Eden, like when was Eden gone? You know, how long was it protected for?
It'd be another testimony.
What's that?
It'd be another testimony of his righteousness.
Yeah.
Do's and don'ts, or why were they there? It would go back to the original.
Yeah, I mean, maybe at this point it was wiped out during the flood. Eden finally is done away at the flood. No one really knows. We're never given a timestamp of how long was the garden protected. I don't know. I've thought about that. Like, what happened to the garden?